good morning. I always say good morning. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Game Over International. I'm Tic Tac Tomar. Starting an hour later than usual, but still here to talk about all of the Olympic stuff. Especially what happened when it comes to curling, and again to preview the Canada versus China game that's going to happen later today. So I was taking a look at the chat before getting started. And, no, this is not Steve's fault. I saw a comment saying, "So we're all gonna blame Steve, right?" No, don't blame Steve for this one, um, which is pretty funny. But yeah, hopefully everyone is doing alright. Hopefully everyone's doing well and enjoying their Sunday. So as far as a quick run through of medaling finishes and so on and so forth. Um, I guess I don't know if we want to say tough run for Canada, but a lot of events where Canada definitely didn't finish at the top of the standings in any way, shape, or form. To put that lightly, there was a biathlon where Canada finished 20th. The women's 10K pursuit where Canada finished 54th out of 60. Cross country skiing, Canada finished 10th, and the giant slalom alpine skiing where Canada finished 15th. So it's a rough little rundown there, but what are you gonna do there? I think the biggest thing, and again the biggest conversation is definitely revolving around Canada. I talked about the women's team yesterday and how it seems like they're in trouble just because they're not getting the wins that I think a lot of people are expecting them to, especially considering that this group, this isn't the first time this group has been together at the Olympics. They've had a lot of historic and significant milestones. Participating in curling, whether it's at the Olympics or any other world championship. And it was another loss for the women's team. Losing 8-4. They didn't get on the board until the third end. And then at that point, I want to say the score was either 2-1 or 4-1. You're just trying to catch up at that point. So it's another tough loss there. And then when you move on to the men's game, which was a roller coaster of goofs and mistakes and oops and stuff. So Canada ended up winning. They won 10-5, so good on them. But the way in which the game took place was actually pretty interesting. So at the end of the second, Canada ends up getting 4 points. And that was because the U.S. team kind of made an error in judgment. There are a bunch of Canadian rocks in the house. I want to say they had four. And the second last rock that the United States sent down went all the way through, didn't make contact at all. However, they had the hammer, so they had the final rock to play. And then their last rock didn't really do too much. Did make contact with one of Canada's, but it wasn't enough to knock any of the Canada's rocks out of the house. So they ended up getting 4 points there. And then you move on to the sixth end, and then it was, I guess, Canada's turn. It was Canada's turn to make a mistake, because on the reverse hand you have the United States, who had three rocks in the house, and then Canada has their opportunity to to do something to knock a rock out there, and then reduce the amount of points that the United States can get. They actually ended up coming short on their play, and their rock didn't even get into the house, so the United States got 3 points there. But still ended up being a win. Again, a big 10-5 win for Canada, so it's a good rebound there. But again, when it comes to curling overall, I think or at least this group team event that's taking place, I think the concern or the urgency is definitely around the women's team, and if they'll be able to rebound a little bit, just because again it's been an interesting start for them, and hopefully things turn around there. All right, so yeah, that's one thing that I want to talk about first. Morris, thanks. So moving on to men's hockey, wild game between Finland and Sweden. So Sweden is up 3-0. And then Finland comes back, scores 3 goals in overtime, and then wins. Like that's a wild game. That's a completely wild game. And again, I guess it just speaks to just how nothing is really settled in Olympic hockey. But it's a huge second period. I want to say Sweden scored three goals in the second period. Finland comes back, scoring 3 goals in the third, and then gets the overtime winner to get the final decider there. So really interesting stuff there. But I think it just does speak to, again, to the offensive skill and the offensive potential that not just Finland has, but also Sweden has as well. So once it comes down to the qualifications round, quarterfinals, semifinals, and so on and so forth, that could be one of the teams, or they could be one of the teams to look out for, definitely. In the sense of, hey, don't think that the game is over, because you never know, something might come up. So continuing on, let's talk about Canada versus China. So this is the last preliminary game that will take place before we get into the quote unquote knockout rounds. And this is a game that Canada has to win, which is an interesting conversation, because usually when it comes to Canada at any type of international competition, it's usually like, okay, well, let's just breeze through the preliminary rounds, and then the real test begins, the gold medal game. But with their last loss to the United States has put them in a position where, yes, they're still second in their group, but they really do need this win to secure their spot in the qualification round. So is there pressure? I mean, there should be pressure, regardless of who the opponent is. I mean, yes, they are facing Team China, a team that is just taking part in Olympic hockey for the first time. Actually, this is the first time Canada and China are meeting at any international event. So it's going to be a historic game there. But even though, yes, all the odds are in Canada's favor, I do think that you really need to, I guess, be mindful of what can take place, what can happen, and what can go wrong. And I think it'll be important for Claude Julien in particular to really evaluate and consider the things that went wrong the last game. Again, you have a great start, great physical, high energy start, finishing checks, legitimately finishing checks, getting chances on net. Again, the score is probably different if Strauss-Mann, it isn't as sharp as he was for the United States, but still, it's a completely ideal ideal start. And then you kind of take your foot off the gas and then allow this young, energetic United States team to start to dictate the play, right? And instead of being in control of the pace, you're now getting into a position where you're chasing the game a little bit. Now, granted, once the second period kind of went on, and especially the third period, Canada did, I guess, find their fire again and start to kind of dictate the play a little bit. But, at that point, you're running into a hot goaltender. You're running into a goaltender that is just making save after save after save. So when you look at this game, where you have players who have a lot of professional experience, Jeremy Smith in particular, the goaltender who made 35 saves against Germany, that's a possibility. That's an area that could be concerning, because for hockey is just a game where we're just you're walking around on shoes with swords on the bottom, and you're fighting for this round plastic disc thing, and you shoot it into a box, right? It's a wild game, and anything can take place, anything can go wrong. And we've seen before, time and time again, of a goaltender just deciding, hey, I'm not gonna win. I'm not gonna lose this game. We're not gonna lose this game, right? And if China has any, I guess, any motivation or any extra flair, in walking into this would be their first win of of the men's hockey tournament. If they ended up getting this, and so not only would it be a huge upset, but it would also be a pretty significant milestone for them. I think that's one thing that's really going to stand out. At least that'll stand out for me is, will Canada play a quote unquote? And I know this is a huge hockey cliche. Are they going to play a full 60 minutes, or will there be those kind of ebbs and flows moments, where China might get back into the game? So that'll be interesting there. Another thing to keep in mind, and this is a question that I was asked yesterday in the chat. Do you put Pascal back in, or do you put Levi in? And I think that'll be an interesting thing as well, because again, Pascal was very critical of his own play. He said that he felt like he was fighting the puck a lot, That that there are two goals in particular that he thought that he probably should have had, and if you have those goals, then it's an overtime. It's an overtime game. Probably referring to one, the Kenny Augustino slap shot that just trickled through his arm, and then also the, let's see, it was the third goal against, which I believe was Meyer or Miley rather. But it was the play behind the net. Pascal goes behind the net trying to play the puck. Things go wrong, and then there's pretty much just an open net for the United States player to score, and I believe that made the game 3-1 at that point. So you think of those games, or do you focus on the strong saves? Again in the first period where where the United States really started to kind of push the pace a little bit. Do you focus on the fact that he made like a flurry of 5 saves in a row, robbed least prospect Nick Abruzzi, with the right pad save? Do you focus on that? So I don't know. I think it's kind of up in the air, and I think it's kind of up and down again because there is a lot of urgency towards this game. They can't lose. Like they cannot lose this game. So it'll be interesting to see if they go back to Pascal or if they give Levi an opportunity and kind of give him a run. I don't know. I think it would be interesting. It'd be interesting if Levi got the shot. I think it would be. Obviously Pascal might be a person that they're leaning on more. But I think it would be interesting if if Canada looks at Levi and says, "Hey, listen, this is a huge game for us. We need you here. The net is yours." And perhaps that leads into some positive, so I guess some positive momentum or some energy generated moving forward. So perhaps I don't know. Perhaps Levi ends up getting the net there. But I think either way, it is an important game for Canada, definitely. Now on the other side, I do think it's also pretty significant that the Team China is in this type of situation. Again, it is a historic milestone as tournament for them. And even though they don't have many many Chinese born players, I think the I guess the spread or the spread of representation of the Chinese nationality on this team, I think is pretty significant. You have Canadian-born Chinese players, you have American-born Chinese players. So I think seeing that dynamic on the ice and within this team, I think is one thing that isn't being talked about enough. But I think it's actually pretty interesting. I think it speaks to why the Olympics can actually be a pretty significant thing, especially when it comes to being someone at home and watching these games take place. So some people will say like, oh well, it's just because the China doesn't have enough high-end talent in hockey. Sure, maybe, but I also think that we can kind of look at the significant side of this and just see the spread of diversity within one team. And I think that's actually pretty significant, and that's pretty cool. So it'll be interesting, I guess, to see what the score ends up being. I think I saw from a lot of like prop bets and a lot of like prediction sites that people are expecting Canada to win 9-0, which who knows? But I think either way it'll be a pretty interesting game just to see how things kind of take place there. Any questions from the chat? Hey, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I think it'll definitely be interesting to see how Canada really does respond from that. Because ideally you want to take the positivity from tonight's or from the game that's happening today and hopefully have that lead up into the the semifinals and the quarterfinals and so on and so forth. You're gonna have to run into the United States again at some point. Will Canada be ready for that? And I think for the first time in a while, you're walking into a tournament where Canada might have the pedigree, but I think they don't necessarily have the personnel to kind of put them in that dominating figure force position as they usually are. And yes, that does speak to the fact that NHL players aren't aren't at the tournament, and instead a lot of like former NHL players or future NHL or players who are hoping to get back into the NHL with a strong tournament, which is probably a possibility. That did happen the last time. The last time the Winter Olympics took place and NHL players weren't there. There are a number of players, I think both on Canada and United States, who wound up getting NHL contracts for the rest of the season and played on playoff rosters. So I think there's some players who in particular who have a lot to play for. For example, like I wouldn't be surprised if Eric Stahl is actually seeing this as an opportunity to kind of say like, hey, let's showcase things, see that I still got it, and see that I can still be an asset in significant hockey, because his last stint with the Habs, even though yes the Habs made it all the way to the Stanley Cup final, and for Leafs fans that's still something that stings. I do think there was a point where he kind of was a non-factor, wasn't really necessarily used as much, or didn't necessarily stand out too well. On the roster. So I think a player like Eric Stahl is taking this opportunity to say like, hey, I'm gonna perform and play meaningful hockey on the biggest stage ever. Perhaps this could be a showcasing event, and maybe have some teams, some scouts who are just watching the games and then thinking like, hey, if you need to upgrade a third or fourth line center, maybe you can play, maybe you can have something going there. Josh Hosang is a player that that all these fans are literally wondering, like, hey, when are the Leafs going to sign Josh Hosang? When are the Leafs going to sign Josh Hosang? So I think this is a good opportunity for him as well. And I think something that he mentioned, even before the Olympic tournament began, was the idea of entertaining or listening to offers from other teams. And it was actually nice to hear him say that he would talk to Kyle Dubas first and confer with the Leafs first before making any decisions. But I think on one hand you have teams who are recognizing the type of player he's had based off the season he's had in the AHL with the Marlies, and at the same time you can look at how he's played on the Olympic tournament so far and think like, yeah, this could be a difference maker. Maybe whether it's in a bottom six role, middle six role. I think Josh Hosang is a player that can help a team. All right, and I think again, based on when you look at the way he skates, how he plays with other players, how he resonates off of them really well, makes good reads, has quick hands. I think has a really great shot, even though the puck kind of bobbled on him against the United States. But I think that's a player that can be a difference maker, and I wouldn't be surprised if NHL teams are looking at Josh Hosang and thinking, hey, this if we need some offensive depth, that can be a player there that can help. Buffalo's definitely watching Owen Power. So I think that'll be interesting there. Maybe they say like, hey, Owen Power, do you wanna sign your entry level contract now, and then come over and play? So I think there are a lot of players who have a lot of stakes behind this tournament and behind this game in particular. I think it's a big cliche, but people say all the time, you can play a game in regular situations. You can play a game when the games don't matter, but how are you playing when the games do matter? And I think again, this game against Canada and China, which I know on the surface it sounds a little ridiculous that I'm kind of putting a lot of pressure and a lot of this I don't know, I guess it's like this phantasmic energy towards a game where again Canada is the favorite, but yeah, you never know. You never know what can happen. You never know what can take place. And again, I'm looking at a China team who has everything to gain and nothing to lose. Right? They're heading into this tournament knowing that they'll likely be one of the weaker teams. Right? This is one of the first time they're taking part in the men's hockey international tournament. There's no screaming pressure to perform like Hockey Canada or USA Hockey does. So they hold the cards here. If they come out and they have a strong game, a huge game, but they lose, well, hey, that's a moral victory. It's a step in the right direction. For hockey from China moving forward. If they get blown out, if they completely lose, they get shelled, hey, maybe the predictions are right and Canada does win 9-0. Again, people aren't going to be too surprised. That's the quote unquote expectation. But if they win, like imagine if they dictate the play the entire game, if Jeremy Smith is standing on his head making save after save, if you have more offensive contributions from like a Parker Smith, from a Tyler Wong, like if you have those players standing out and taking it to Canada and winning, like is it out of the realm of possibility that that China like could come into this game and win like 2-1 or 2-1 or 1-0? I think that has to be the mindset. Right? I think if you're the coaching staff of China, like, I think you have to have that mindset of like we have to do everything in our power to keep things close. Like we can't try to get into a scoring race where we're trading chances back and forth. I think you really need to commit to a shutdown-ish defensive style, where you're gonna be hit a lot, so you have to take the hits, score on the opportunities whenever those come up, and also shut things down when you have a lead. Like I wouldn't be surprised if there's a moment where we're trying to get the lead, say they score the first goal of the game, that they just like shut things down and say, okay, cool, we're gonna go 95 doubles here, the neutral zone trap, clog up the middle, just keep everything in the outside, give the goaltender the best opportunity to see any shots, and to stop things there. So again, I think the start will be really, really significant. I think how both teams start will be huge. I think Canada will definitely want to score first. China will definitely want to score first. Now again, that sounds obvious. Like obviously you want to score first. You don't want to be in a position where, where you're coming from behind. But I think when it comes to the mindset that either team has to have heading into this, I think if you're Canada, you want to overwhelm China as quickly as possible, and put them in a position where they feel like they can't come back in the game. And then if you're China, you want to be in a position where you can get a lead and you can control the pace of the game. You can control the speed, the tempo, the structure, whether things are going to open up or close off. I think so. I think that's where scoring first helps in both scenarios. And on the other hand, again, if I'm the coaching staff of China, I'm wondering who's starting in net, because that might determine and impact what's the offensive strategy. I think what we saw from Pascal is that if you just start throwing shots from like anywhere, and he gets to a point where he's just like moving around the crease, that's where you can score. If you put the puck behind the net and you force him to come out of the net, and you put pressure on either side, mistakes can be made, right? If you have a lot of traffic, whole bunch of traffic right in front of him, you take your low shots, you get a rebound, he loses track of the puck, score on the rebound, right? So I think there are a lot of ways in which China can have success in this game, and this isn't to put Canada down or anything, but I do think that that a game like this isn't an automatic write-off for Canada. I don't think it's an automatic win, and I do think that there are things that can take place that can see China winning this game, and then Canada really is in trouble. So hopefully Claude Julien has addressed a lot of the issues that took place in that game against the United States, because again, if those issues return, if they come up again, then it won't be as easy as Canada would like it to be, and then if they end up losing this game, then who knows what takes place toward for the rest of the tournament. I don't know specifically if them losing means that they're out or they can't make it, but I do know that it will make it difficult, because if other teams who are below them win in the standings and then knock them out of the top two spot, then you have a spicy meatball, and then you have some questions to be raised. So it'll be interesting game, definitely, and that's taking place, I want to say, at 8:10 Eastern time, Canada versus China. So can Canada take it to China very, very quickly? Can they play their game? Can they intimidate them offensively, physically, what have you? Is it going to be Pascal in net, or is it going to be Levi in net? what's going to take place there. And on the side of China, I think what is the thought process going to be? Um, can you keep up? Can you keep up with Canada? Um, can you weather the storm that is going to come for sure? I think the first 10 minutes are going to be very important for China. I think if you can get out of the first 10 minutes without allowing a goal, then I think you set yourself up pretty well to have success for the rest of the game. But if it ends up being like, I don't know, like 2-0, 3-0 after the first half of the first period, then it'll be a tough go, and a tough sell there, to have a comeback. All right. But hey, we saw comebacks. We already saw comebacks again. Finland came back from 3-0 and ended up forcing overtime. So hope won't immediately be gone. If the score is that bad after 10 minutes, but I think that's one thing you want to do if you're China is you want to limit the goal scoring to as few goals as possible. You don't want to try to get into a shooting match, um, or a scoring match rather with Canada, because that's a kind of game that not many teams um, can make use of, and can play with. And again, I think you have players like Mason McTavish, who is just chomping at the bit to get back on the ice and actually score and produce some offense. Considering the fact that he had a prime opportunity against the States to score and ended up ripping a shot off the bar. So I think that'll be interesting, definitely, to see if China can weather the storm and if they can keep the game close. I think if you keep the game close, then they have a chance to win. And again, if it's a blowout, then it'll be really difficult to try to have a comeback. And again, on Canada's end, I think again the first 10 minutes are important, and you really need to assert some level of dominance right off the hop. Again, whether it's with huge hits, whether it's pressure, whether it's sustained pressure in the offensive zone, like starting the game, and then you spend just like 2 or 3 minutes in the offensive zone just rotating and rotating and rotating. Shoot, recover, shoot, recover. If you can get to that point and get to the point where China makes a mistake and you score from that, then I think the game is pretty well off at that point. So it'll be interesting again to see what type of team that we see from Canada, what type of team we see from China, and what adjustments, if any, are made as the game goes on. I think that's another thing that I saw people talking about on Canada's end, via Claude Julien, was that when things weren't going well, there weren't too many adjustments being made. I think there were some times, for example, where like the top line and Eric Stahl, Mason McTavish, and Josh Hosang just didn't look like they were clicking too well. Now again, worked out because Canada started to put on the pressure as the game went on. But I think that'll be interesting as well to see what kind of like in-game adjustments Claude Julien can make. And if we're assuming that this ends up being a win for Canada, then not only will that be an important thing to take in consideration today, but I think it'll also be an important thing to take on down the line, especially again if you meet the United States in the knockout rounds. When things aren't going well, can you make those adjustments and actually put different players in different positions? So I think that'll be interesting to see. Okay, so I think that's it. I think that's all for today's edition of Game Over International. So thank you for those who watched. Again, sorry for the hour delay. It was not Mikey Stephens' fault. It was not Steve's fault. Things just took place and things happened. But you know what? I think it was good that we did. I'm gonna throw a hockey cliche here. We battled back. Things weren't looking too well, but we battled back. We fought through it. Had some nice dialogue. Had some nice conversations. So if you're watching curling, take in the women's team, take in the men's team, definitely. See how things go there. And again, for men's hockey, Canada and China is happening tonight. Tonight on the Eastern, tonight at 8:10 Eastern time. So again, it'll be interesting to see how Canada walks into this game that they really, really do need to do well in and need to win. So, with everything there, I'm Tic Tac Tomar again. Thank you for watching another episode of Game Over International. Andrew Berkshire will be back tomorrow. covering the rest of the Olympics. And again, I think something that would be interesting moving forward there is actually we're going to start getting into the women's hockey and how they're really getting into the thick of things. So that'll be interesting there. All right. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Thank you for watching and take it easy.